G'day cocktail lovers, how are you? I hope things are going well for you. Welcome to the Milk Punch channel. When I first did a milk clarified drink, aka milk punch, I didn't really think I'd be doing as many videos on it with variations, but I freely admit I'm a bit obsessed by it at the moment. I'm still amazed by the process. Plus, the videos with milk clarified drinks getting more views. It appears that's what the people want. That's what people are searching for. So who am I to argue? Gonna give the people what they want, but also with a very clear purpose. When I was talking about milk punch on one of my live streams, one of the viewers who was lactose intolerant said, hey, does it work with, for instance, coconut milk? And I know lots of people do use coconut milk, so I said, yeah, I'm gonna try that. I'm going to make one with coconut milk. And we found a recipe that on paper sounded great. It was called a Paloma milk punch. It's a tequila focused milk punch. It sounded great. I made it. It was terrible. I don't know exactly why. My first feeling about it was too salty, but there was no salt in it. And then I thought, maybe that's too much lemon in there. And I did play with the recipe. The recipe said to use grapefruit juice, and I didn't have any, and I had lemon juice. I said, hey, it's another citrus. Maybe that was too much lemon juice. I did rescue it by, well, adding a sweetener to it and then clarifying it again with dairy milk, and it tasted much better, and it tasted even better when I added lemonade to it. Had it in a tall glass. It was very refreshing. And the recipe does actually say to top up with lemonade, or club soda as Americans say. This was intended to be a big punch for 10 people. But there was nothing in it, and the volumes in it weren't such that I would expect to not like the drink. So I'm not sure what went wrong. Was it just the lemon juice that I did? Was, coconut milk clarification just not for me? So I decided, in the name of science, I need to do a comparison. And not just a single comparison, a double comparison. So what I'm going to do is make the Paloma milk punch again, but with dairy milk and without the lemon juice, to see if that makes it better. And then I'm going to make another milk punch I've made before with dairy milk that was really good, like one of the most amazing drinks I've ever had. It was called Mimi's Milk Punch. I'm gonna make that with coconut juice and see if that makes a significant difference to the taste on that one. So, bad drink with dairy milk, good drink with coconut milk, and I'm going to see what happens. The Paloma milk punch recipe I found fairly large volumes. If you're going to try this for yourself and you find a recipe and you think that's volumes too high, all you've got to keep an eye on is the ratios. So if you want to make a smaller batch, just keep the ratios consistent. And I've also gone the other way. I found when I had the ratios for a single drink, I thought, no, I want to make multiple drinks. So I just tripled the ratios so I could make multiple drinks. And you do lose a little bit of liquid in the clarification process as well. So keep that in mind. But this recipe, fairly big volumes, so no shaking this one. That's a little bit simpler. Don't need a shaker, not straining anything yet. I'm not using shaker, I'm just using a bowl that I can pour this stuff into because big, because we're starting off with 6 ounces of tequila. That was the end of that bottle, but never fear, I have another 6 ounces of Blanco tequila. Although you could use a Reposado if that was the sort of tequila that you preferred to use. The recipe also called for 3 ounces of a grapefruit liqueur. That's a bit obscure. Even with the number of things I have, I don't have a grapefruit liqueur. Do have a number of fruit liqueurs, so I thought I'd play around with it a bit, and I'm going to modify even a bit more than what I did before. It's going to be mostly this Australian blackberry liqueur under the name Marionette. I'm going to do 2 ounces of this, and then just for fun, I'm going to put in 1 ounce of pimento dram, also known as allspice dram. It has fantastic flavors. It's in a lot of tiki drinks, and it goes well with tequila too. So a bit of an experiment. I'm going to put 1 ounce of pimento dram in as well. In next goes the very important acid component. This is 4.5 ounces of grapefruit juice and 4.5 ounces of lime juice. I almost forgot, we want 1.5 ounces of anchovies. This is a chili liqueur, puts a real zing in your drink. I'm also putting in 7.5 ounces of tea. I'm using Earl Grey tea. You can use whichever you like. You can use a really flavorful tea. The recipe I saw even said to make up a spice mix to go with it. So additional flavors, you can go as wild or as mild as you like in here. I'm keeping it relatively simple, just putting some tea in there. In a separate container, I'm putting 3.5 ounces of milk. You see some guys that say, oh, this should be warmed up. The one thing everyone agrees on, if you're going to warm the milk, you do not boil it, you warm it, you simmer it. But I found it isn't actually necessary to heat the milk up. You get a great result with milk straight from the fridge. Again, full fat, because the fat content is important. Our drinky part will actually make the milk curdle, which sounds gross, but this is all some great home chemistry here. That actually forms a filter, which does amazing things to the drink. You can't actually see it in my bowl, but the drink, well, it looks like tea. It's a very dark brown at the moment from some brown liqueurs and the tea. It will come out very different. And this is very important, said it before, say it again. You add the drink, the citrus and spirits to the milk, not the other way around. It does make a difference with the development of the curds. It's quite important. And now comes the really fun and exciting bit. After giving this a little bit of a stir, I'm gonna leave it for at least half an hour. For the second part of our experiment, I'm going to make Mimi's Milk Punch, which, as I may have mentioned before, is one of the best drinks I've ever had. Big call, possibly, but if you play along at home, you'll be able to see if you agree with me. Now, this is a brandy-based punch, which was actually most likely what the original milk punches, which people would have been making in the 1600s, 1700s, they almost universally would have been using brandy and rum. This one is brandy and rum. It's a real classic. There's going to be 1.5 cups of brandy in this little beauty. This is for a large number of people, okay? I'm not just going to drink this on my own. The recipe suggests 1/2 cup of plantation pineapple rum, which I don't have. I do have plantation overproof. I'm going to do 1/2 cup of that. And I'll put a bit of pineapple juice in to compensate for the fact this isn't the pineapple rum. We add 1 cup of tea, whatever you prefer, black tea most commonly. Just for a bit of fun, I'm using a fruit tea, a blood orange fruit tea. I thought that might add a nice flavour. It's always fun to experiment. For our all-important acidic content in this one, some citrus. I've made a mix. This is 1/4 cup of lemon juice, 3/4 cup of pineapple juice. So 1 cup of juice altogether going in there. We're going with 1 cup of milk, and as I said, I'm going to experiment. Originally I made this drink with dairy milk. I'm going to make it with coconut milk, and yeah, little repeat warning, if you're going to warm it up, I don't know if it's necessary. A lot of people say it is, a lot of people say it isn't. You don't boil it, you just warm it. And remember the important step, add the drink, the citrus and alcohol, to the milk, not the other way around. Let them have a jolly old time making curds for at least half an hour, and then we will come back and see what's what. Time has passed, quite a lot of time in fact, because I made quite large batches and they took a long time to filter. Now, my initial findings, the Mimi's Milk Punch, which I previously regarded as one of the best drinks I've had, and I tried to do it with coconut milk rather than dairy milk. Didn't like it, didn't hate it, it wasn't terrible, but it was not as good as the prior batches I'd made with dairy milk. This one, the Paloma Milk Punch, which I'd made previously with coconut milk and really didn't like, so this time made with dairy milk, liked it much more. I'll give you some tasting notes. I should add that because I didn't like the way the Mimi's Milk Punch came out, I adapted it. You don't have to stop once. It's not a one-off process, the milk clarification. What I did was add a little bit more sugar and some pineapple juice to the batch, then clarified it again with dairy milk. It came out lighter still. It was slightly more orange before I did it the second time. Before I clarified the first time, it was an almost opaque brown, the magic of the clarifying process. But I got it much more to my liking by doing a second batch with dairy milk. Now this is a cognac and rum heavy drink. And it doesn't really taste like cognac or rum at all. Like it's really nice. To me it has somewhat of a wine taste because there's tea in there as well. I can taste the tea, but all the harsh tannins get absorbed by the milk curds. So it's a much gentler taste. So to me, this is reminiscent of a light wine more than a spirit, which is not surprising because cognac is a fortified wine essentially. And I can taste the tea and the fruit flavors are all in there. Makes for just a really nice light drink. Here we go with the Paloma Milk Punch, which was tequila heavy, also with a lot of fruits, fruit liqueurs and fruit juices in it. And the lime is coming through quite strongly in this. There's quite a lot of lime juice in it. Lime is a fairly strong flavour. Possibly would be well served by having a bit less lime in it. Unless you're a big fan of lime, then it's really good. One more tasting note, although I've been drinking these straight as cocktails, the older classic recipes for milk punch are always intended to be topped with soda water, lemonade, club soda, whatever you like, tonic, whatever you feel like. And I'm going to do a little comparison now. Just a bit of the old lemonade. This is in the Mimi's Milk Punch. And it goes really well. I don't think it necessarily needs it, but it goes really well with a bit of lemonade topping it. And we add a little bit of lemonade to the Paloma Milk Punch. See, this one's almost clear, and well, I think this benefits a lot from the addition of some bubbles on top. As I said, it's very limey, and just diluting it a little, I reckon you could go as much as 50-50 with the toppings when you serve it. The Paloma Punch and lemonade or soda or tonic, whatever takes your fancy. Now it tastes a lot like limeade, which is actually quite dangerous because there was a decent whack of alcohol in here. To sum up my milk punch experiment, I've now tried with coconut milk twice and have not particularly liked the results. I'm actually going to persevere. I'm not going to write it off completely. I might try smaller batches though. That's one big bit of advice I'd give you. Definitely try this. I find this to be a lot of fun and a really interesting process, and you almost always get really good drinks out of it. But experiment with smaller batches. I made a ridiculously large batch. If these had been terrible, I would have wasted a lot of booze. It would have been a really expensive experiment. But I was being a bit cavalier, going, no, 3 cups of cognac, here we go. You know what? It worked. And I was lucky because, like I said, that would have been an expensive mistake. I think when you're experimenting with this, simply follow cocktail recipes. You want something that has citrus in it, citric, and in fact you could cheat even with a cocktail that doesn't have a citrus juice in it. You could literally add citric acid, which you can get from most supermarkets, food stores, get some citric acid. This would be an experimentation thing because you need the citric acid to react with the milk. It's all about the ratios when you're making these milk punches. Like the recipes that I started with, they were talking about several cups of spirits, which is an enormous amount. Just turn that into ounces. If something says 1.5 cups, make that 1.5 ounces and balance all the other ingredients accordingly. Or simply go for a classic cocktail recipe, don't worry that it's not designed as a milk punch, cocktail that has citrus in it, and then add that to milk. And you want the ratio to be about 4 parts of your beverage to 1 part milk. So maybe you want to make more than one, because a lot of cocktails are less than 4 ounces total. So double it and you have drinks for 2. Or maybe, and this is something that I learned from experience, triple it, because you do lose a little bit of the liquid content. It gets absorbed by the milk curds, but it's down to experimentation. Like I said, maybe don't leap in and use half a bottle of booze like some of these recipes call for, because that is literally for making a punch to serve 10 or 20 people. Start with enough for 1 or 2 drinks and get a recipe you like, and then hey, go to town. If you perfect a recipe, make a whole decanter of it, and it's perfect for serving up really quickly at parties, because we're not drinking alone no matter what everyone says about isolation, okay? We're doing it with friends. We're not alcoholics, we're mixologists. And having said that, I'm going to experiment more. I'm going to experiment with almond milk, etc., because basically anything that has a fat content will work with this curding process. So a lot of people, who don't want to use dairy milk want something else. Like I said, I tried coconut milk. So far, I'm not a fan. I am going to persevere and see if I can find something that works better with it. But I also want to try the various nut milks, because again, for people who are vegan or just lactose intolerant who want an alternative, I want to do some taste comparisons to see how well the different substances work. And besides doing it in the name of science, I'm also doing it in the name of getting some really nice drinks. Cheers.